Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my channel if this is your first time here. My name is Megan and I am the witch here around the cauldron, and it just started pouring rain with lots of bright lightning and loud thunder. So that might be a little fitting for what we're going to talk about today. And Lúnasa is almost here, and I wanted to talk about a little known goddess, Tailtiu, in Irish mythology. And in my opinion, she is the entire reason that we celebrate Lúnasa to begin with. So I'm not going to go into full detail on the history and traditions and everything of Lúnasa. I believe I have an entire video on that already, and I also have a blog post about that on my website. I will leave links for both of those in the description below. The things that are relevant for this particular video are going to include the fact that Lúnasa is one of 4 Celtic fire festivals generally celebrated on or around August 1st, and it is the first harvest festival of the season. An interesting thing to note with the spelling of Lúnasa, I will put them both up here on the video for you, is that the older version, as far as I'm aware, the older version of Lúnasa was spelled at the beginning with L-U-G-H, and that is a corresponding part for Lugh, the Irish god Lugh. And then the modern spelling of Lúnasa is L-U, fada, N-A-S-A, Lúnasa. And this is still a word that is used today in modern Irish. It's a word for the month of August. The word Lúnasa, as it was previously, is thought to be a combination of many different words that essentially break down to mean the funeral games of Lugh. And what's interesting to note is that it's not the funeral games of Lugh as in Lugh is the one that died. It is a celebration that began with the god Lugh for someone else. And who is that someone else? That someone else would be Tailtiu, Lugh's foster mother. Or at least in a few of the stories, Tailtiu is Lugh's foster mother. As with everything related to Irish mythology and folklore, it's a bit more complicated. Different places in Ireland will have different stories and different mythology, but the version that I'm focusing on today does have Tailtiu as Lugh's foster mother. According to Mary Jones's Celtic Encyclopedia, one thing that I want to note about Lúnasa before we move into talking about Tailtiu, because she is the focus of this video, is that historically Lúnasa was celebrated 15 days before and 15 days after August 1st, and August 1st was considered the height of the festival. So if you can't celebrate Lúnasa on July 31st through August 1st, generally sundown to sundown, it's okay. These festivals tend to span days, weeks, and sometimes even months. So don't get caught up in the date. It's more about the celebration of Tailtiu and the seasonal harvest. So those are the things that are going to be important or relevant when talking about Tailtiu. And Tailtiu is an Irish goddess that actually predates the Tuatha Dé Danann. And the Tuatha Dé Danann are the deities that we see, the Dagda, Brigid, Angus Mac O, and a few others that I can't remember off the top of my head. At a basic level, Tailtiu may be considered an earth goddess or a goddess of the harvest, but she is also a goddess that relates heavily with sovereignty because she was the queen of her part of Ireland. And it's very important to mention here that Irish mythology and most Celtic deities, in my experience, don't have the cut and dry associations and correspondences that people generally give to Greek deities, for example, like Aphrodite being a goddess of love. Celtic and Irish mythology isn't like that. We have Brigid, for example, who oversees poets and blacksmiths and healing wells and keening and so many different things. Tailtiu is no different. There are so many different things that give her meaning, or that she gives meaning to. I think that's a better way of saying it. So many different things that she is associated with that it's hard to really put her in a box, so to speak. And I don't know about you, but I'm not a fan of putting deities in a box because they generally don't fit. So when it comes to the harvest and the earth part of Tailtiu being a goddess, we have to really get into her stories, and we'll do that part in a minute. When it comes to her sovereignty, that goes into her history because she is a queen. Tailtiu is the daughter of Magmor, which means Great Plain. And depending on your source, some even say that Tailtiu is the daughter of a Spanish king. But I don't tend to hold that as a belief because that doesn't really make sense to me, and it's not my experience. So when it comes to who her father is, Mag Mor, meaning Great Plain, that's going to make a lot of sense when we talk about Tailtiu as an earth goddess and a goddess of the harvest, when we talk about her story and one of the main reasons that Lúnasa is celebrated. But it's also important to note that Tailtiu was the queen of the Fir Bolg, and they were in Ireland before the Tuatha Dé Danann came. Tailtiu was actually married to Aki McCarrick, and I'm really hoping that I'm pronouncing these names right, but if I'm not, please feel free to correct me in the comments below. But Aki McCarrick was the last of the Fir Bolg kings, and under his reign, and this is really important to mention because kings and queens don't work on their own, right? Generally, the king is influenced by his queen. And under Aki McCarrick's reign, there was no war. They had a harvest every year. There was no rain, but dew was always around, and so their harvests were always plentiful. And it said that Aki McCarrick actually created the first justice system of Ireland. And knowing what I know about Ireland and the way that queens and goddesses of sovereignty relate back to the kingship, I am fully behind the idea that Tailtiu had a lot of influence over her husband at that point in time. This is even more apparent to me when we think about Telltown, because Telltown in Ireland is actually named after Tailtiu, and this is due to Aki McCarrick. This is what he named his palace, I believe is what it said. He named this city after his wife, and I think that kind of proves the point that Tailtiu had to be so influential on him that he named an entire city after her. Eventually, the Tuatha Dé Danann showed up and they invaded Ireland, and with them came Brigid and the Dagda, on Morrigan, Lugh, and so many other deities that we see in Irish mythology. And this culminated in a battle between the Tuatha Dé Danann and the Fir Bolg. And what happened is that Aki McCarrick actually died, so Tailtiu lost her husband. And this happened during the Battle of Matura, if I'm remembering correctly. I'll leave links for all of my sources in the description below. But after that happened and after her husband died, she was actually married off to someone else, Ohu Gorab, I believe I'm saying that correctly. And then she eventually became Lugh's foster mother. There are two historical sources that I want to read to you really quick, and they both tell the story of Tailtiu and give us some important information about her that we can use today in a modern context to honor her and really understand her sacrifice and what she did to have an entire celebration and festival in her honor. The first one comes from the Lower Gabála Éireann, and in this particular passage, this details what happened when the Tuatha Dé Danann invaded Ireland and clashed with the Fir Bolg. This is her story as translated by Lady Gregory from the Lower Gabála Éireann, which is the Book of Invasions. While Lugh was king, his foster mother Tailtiu, daughter of Mag Mor, the Great Plain, died. And before her death she bade her husband Duach the Dark, he that built the fort of hostages in Tver, to clear away the wood of Cuan, the way there could be a gathering of the people around her grave. So he called to the men of Ireland to cut down the wood with their wide-bladed knives and billhooks and hatches. And within a month the whole wood was cut down. And Lugh buried her in the plain of Midda, and raised a mound over her that is to be seen to this day. And he ordered fires to be kindled, and keening to be made, and games and sports to be held in the summer of every year out of respect to her. And the place they were held got its name from her. That is Tailtin. So this is one version of what happens after Tailtiu dies. And the way that Tailtiu dies actually is really interesting because it connects back with her father and his name, Mag Mor, the Great Plain. And what happens is that Tailtiu exhausts herself, clearing the plains so that crops could grow and things could be harvested and the people could eat. And it's actually said that when she cleared the plain, before there was any harvest, it actually turned to a field of clovers. And this shows us a sort of cycle of death, life, and rebirth, because we've got the death, the clearing of the plain. We have the full cycle that happens when out of clearing the plain comes clovers. Rebirth after death. That's my own UPG when it comes to that, unverified personal gnosis. So I do know that there are stories of clovers filling the plain that she cleared, but the connection with life and death and that sort of cycle is a connection that I personally made seeing these stories and reading more and learning more about Tailtiu. So I don't know if that has any historical basis. I just wanted to make that very clear. The next one that I want to read to you is from the metrical, I always say this wrong, Didsenchas. So they are the place name poems. And all of these poems tell how places get their name, and they tell the stories behind these places in Ireland. And this is the one of Tailtiu and Tailtiu. Great the deed that was done with the axe's help by Tailtiu, the reclaiming of meadowland from the even wood by Tailtiu, daughter of Magmore. When the fair wood was cut down by her, roots and all out of the ground, before the year's end, it became Bregma. It became a plain blossoming with clover. Her heart burst in her body from the strain beneath her royal vest. Not wholesome, truly, is a face like the coal for the sake of woods or pride of timber. Long was the sorrow, long the weariness of Tailtiu, in sickness after heavy toil. The men of the island of Erin, to whom she was in bondage, came to receive her last behest. She told them in her sickness, feeble she was but not speechless, that they should hold funeral games to lament her, zealous the deed. About the calends of August she died, on a Monday, on the Lúnasa of Lugh. Round her grave from that Monday forth is held the chief fair of noble Erin. Wide-sighted Tailtiu uttered in her land a true prophecy, that so long as every prince should accept her, Erin should not be without perfect song. A fair with gold, with silver, with games, with music of chariots, with adornment of body and of soul by means of knowledge and eloquence. A fair without wounding or robbing of any man, without trouble, without dispute, without reaving, without challenge of property, without suing, without law sessions, without evasion, without arrest. A fair without sin, without fraud, without reproach, without insult, without contention, without seizure, without theft, without redemption. No man going into the seats of the women, nor woman into the seats of the men, shining fair, but each in due order by rank in his place in the high fair. When we look at these stories of Tailtiu and we hear what she did and how she did it, it's very easy to make the connection between her being a harvest goddess and a goddess of the earth. She is also an old goddess, and not in the sense of physical age, but in the sense that she was there in Ireland before the Tuatha Dé Danann came. And I believe she's still there, and she will be there for many, many years to come. And we can also see the connection between Lúnasa and the funeral of Tailtiu, because she requested on her deathbed that her funeral and her death be celebrated forever. And that's what Lúnasa is. While yes, in modern times, I feel like some people may have lost the connection with Tailtiu and not a lot of people know about her, but it is still a celebration of the harvest, of the season, of Lugh and honoring him. But also, in my personal practice at least, I am trying to also embrace the fact that it is not just about Lugh. It's not just about the harvest and the turning of the wheel. It's about Tailtiu. It's about personal sacrifice for the greater good of the community. It's about harvest and abundance and cycles and sovereignty. Because I think Tailtiu did this for two reasons. One, because that's just who she is. And coming from being the daughter of the Great Plain, Magmore, that is ingrained in her to tend the earth and be sovereign in her own right. But I also think that she cleared the plain because of her sovereignty and because of her connection to the island of Ireland and its people. So just in this video alone, with what little information I have been able to give you about Tailtiu, I hope that you can see the connection between Lúnasa and Tailtiu, and maybe go back and do a little bit of research on your own as you celebrate Lúnasa. Because while yes, Lúnasa is about the harvest, and it is about Lugh and the fact that he honored his foster mother's request, it is also just as much about the foster mother. It is just as much about Tailtiu and her sacrifice so that her people can have a place to grow food and live in abundance. Please also keep in mind that I am no scholar. This is all based on my very limited research on Tailtiu. And I say limited because I'm not an academic. I don't necessarily have access to a bunch of academic sources. This is all stuff that I have learned on my own through my own Google searches and research. So if you have any other sources for Tailtiu, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Before we go today, I wanted to give you a few ideas and examples of ways that you can honor Tailtiu this Lúnasa. These ideas are totally UPG. I could not find any information online about Tailtiu and modern worship of Tailtiu or offerings that are given to her. So these are totally UPG and things that I came up with that I feel like would connect really well with Tailtiu and the theme behind the season. Dedicate your time to Tailtiu working in the garden. Again, Tailtiu is all about the harvest and feeding the people. So if you have a garden, no matter how small, spend some time in the garden and dedicate that work to her. You can also hold a feast, even if it's just for yourself, with locally grown or in-season fruits and vegetables. And whatever you make, give an offering of that to her as well. Another idea that I have is to volunteer your time to a community in need. This can be any community, because Tailtiu is about sovereignty and serving the people, because she is a queen, right? Tailtiu is a queen. Even after her husband, Achimakerek, died, she still married into the Tuatha and was still a queen. So serving the people, serving the community was part of her role as a queen and as a goddess. So if you feel so inclined, volunteer your time to a community in need and dedicate that time spent and your sacrifice of time to Tailtiu for Lúnasa. And the last idea I have here is to just enjoy life. The Tailtean Games were something that happened on Lúnasa every year up until I don't even know when. They don't do it anymore. But the Tailtean Games were games of strength and endurance, but also of artistry and druidry and creativity and telling stories and of intelligence. So sing, dance, craft, play, enjoy life, and use your skills and dedicate that time to Tailtiu as an offering. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video on Tailtiu. I hope you have learned something about this little known goddess. I will leave links to all of my sources in the description below. I definitely plan on revisiting Tailtiu, maybe writing some blog posts about her as I learn more about her and connect with her on a deeper level, because that is something that I'm feeling called to do. And maybe it's just the energy of Lúnasa. Maybe that's it. But I'm not going to turn her away or say no. So I do hope to explore Tailtiu more in the future. If you would like to join a community and speak with some like-minded individuals, feel free to join me over in the forum, forum.roundthecauldron.com. There are so many different things that we can talk about there, and it's really a place for witches and magical people and pagans to get together and be in community together. Don't forget to follow me on social media wherever you can find me and sign up for my newsletter. Check out my website where you can join me over there as a member for as little as $2 a month and get different perks and exclusives. My newest tier is $20 and up, and the biggest perk that I have for that right now is that you get a free monthly tarot reading. So it's like a monthly forecast, and you're gonna get access to courses as soon as I am done writing them. So again, check out the links in the description for all of my sources, all of my personal links, and follow me on social media. Make sure that you subscribe if you haven't done so already, and give the video a thumbs up if you like it. And thank you so much to all of my current members that I have here both on YouTube and on my website, and I will talk to you next time.